MIT researchers placed rats in a T-shaped maze with chocolate at one end. The first time through, the rat's brain activity was high throughout the maze, active, scanning, processing. After 2 weeks of repetition, something changed. Brain activity at the start of the maze spiked, then it dropped almost to baseline for the entire run. Then it spiked again at the reward. The brain had chunked the entire sequence, turn left, run corridor, turn right, find chocolate, into a single automatic routine. The rat was no longer thinking through the maze. It was running a pre-compiled program. This is what habit formation looks like in a mammalian brain. Yours works the same way.
Habits are stored primarily in the basal ganglia, a set of structures at the base of the brain that automate repetitive behavioral sequences. The basal ganglia operate largely independently of the prefrontal cortex. This is why you can drive a familiar route while having a conversation or make your morning coffee while half asleep. The prefrontal cortex, where conscious decision-making lives, has been handed off.
Charles Duhigg's synthesis of the MIT research identified 3 components of the habit loop: a cue, a routine, and a reward. The cue triggers the habit sequence. The routine is the behavior itself. The reward reinforces the loop and trains the brain to remember it. What matters most for habit change is that once a habit loop is encoded, it doesn't disappear when you stop performing it. The basal ganglia retain the loop. It is dormant, not deleted. This is why old habits return under stress. The familiar loop is still there, waiting for its cue.
Willpower is a prefrontal cortex resource. It depletes. Research by Roy Baumeister and colleagues. The ego depletion literature found that acts of self-control draw on a limited cognitive resource, and that later self-control attempts in the same day are measurably less effective than earlier ones. More recent research has complicated this model, but the core finding remains robust. Effortful suppression of a habitual behavior is unreliable over time because it requires a resource that fluctuates. Fighting a habit with willpower is fighting a basal ganglia program with a prefrontal cortex tool.
The intervention approach, supported by the most experimental evidence, is not suppression, it is substitution. To change a habit, keep the cue, keep the reward, and change only the routine. This works because it doesn't fight the encoded loop, it modifies it while leaving the trigger-reward structure intact. Research on smoking cessation found that programs using behavioral substitution, replacing the cigarette with a specific alternative behavior triggered by the same cues, had meaningfully better outcomes than programs based on willpower and avoidance alone.
Implementation intentions are a second intervention with strong experimental support. Developed by psychologist Peter Gollwitzer, implementation intentions take the form of if-then plans. If I encounter this cue, then I will perform this behavior. Research across 94 independent studies found that implementation intentions increase the likelihood of following through on intended behaviors by an average of 83% compared to goal intention alone. The mechanism, the if-then structure, encodes the cue routine link explicitly, reducing the cognitive work required at the moment of decision.
Environment design is the third lever. Research has validated. B.J. Fogg's behavior design research and a large body of environmental psychology work has shown that behavior is powerfully shaped by the availability of cues and the friction involved in performing routines. Removing the cue reduces the probability of habit triggering. Adding friction between the cue and the routine reduces its automatic quality. Making the desired behavior require fewer steps increases its frequency without requiring any willpower. The most effective behavior change happens at the environment level, not the motivation level.
What the neuroscience of habit formation ultimately means is that you are not living your life entirely from conscious choice. A significant proportion of daily behavior, estimates range from 40 to 45%, is habitual in the technical sense, running on automatic in response to environmental cues. This is not a flaw, it is efficiency. The brain that had to consciously decide every small action would be exhausted by noon. What it means practically: if you want to change behavior, identify the cue, keep the reward, substitute the routine, and change the environment that delivers the cue. Willpower is the last resort, not the first tool. Subscribe. Next video, the neuroscience of why you can't stop scrolling and why the designers knew exactly what they were doing.